Hello and welcome to the Freedom Stein Laboratory. Today is the 17th of January, 2026. And wow, we've got a lot of stuff going on around the world, especially when it comes to World War III. That's what I want to talk about on this episode. Things are getting kind of intense. We've heard about World War III. Oh my gosh, let me rewind back to my childhood. I grew up during the Cold War. So even before I was born, which was in 1971, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this is, JFK against Russia. And they wanted to put some nuclear weapons in our backyard in Cuba. And JFK was like, this is not going to happen. It's not okay for America to be in this situation. And he managed to diffuse the situation basically by getting on the phone with Khrushchev and saying, do we really want to kill each other's people? And the answer was no. And yet, even though we had that happen back before 1971, I grew up in a world with the idea that Russia had nuclear weapons and America has nuclear weapons, and we could annihilate each other at any moment. And so we had to hope that both countries cared enough about their citizens to not go after each other. And that's why we had songs come out about, Sting with Do the Russians Love Their Children Too, and that kind of stuff. And even before I was born, back in the 50s, we had children having these drills in school where they would get underneath their desks in case there was a nuclear bomb. And we all know today that getting under your desk ain't going to do nothing if you have radiation flying around. So we moved past that. And when I graduated from high school in 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. And when I sit here, it's hard for me to even think about the fact that I lived in a world where Germany was not just a single country, it was split into East and West Germany. During the Olympics, Katharina Witt was ice skating for East Germany, and she was like with the communists, as we would say back then. And, she couldn't mingle with the other athletes and stuff because they really, you know, watched their people, whether it was East Germany or the Soviet Union. And we had movies like Rocky IV that came out, and it was Rocky against the elite Russian soldier from the Soviet Union. And it's hard to believe that I ever lived in that world. And then when I graduated from high school, the Berlin Wall came down, and that was basically the end of the Soviet Union, the end of communism. And it kind of felt like the Cold War was over and we didn't have to worry about nuclear weapons anymore. And then you fast forward to 2024, 2025, and now into 2026, and we start worrying about it because we have this Ukraine war that's going on between Russia and the Ukraine. And while we're being distracted by things like Candace Owens, who keeps coming out with a more ridiculous conspiracy theory every single day, it seems like, I'm like, wow, is she desperate for people to watch her show or what? I don't even watch it anymore. I can't believe that when my wife and I were out camping, we were like, okay, can we get a signal? Because we don't want to miss the Candace Owens show. And that was like 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And now I'm like, you can't pay me to watch that thing. I'll go on X and look at Cinnamon Shogun's Cliff Notes about Candace Owens because I'm like, I can't even watch the Crazy Train anymore. And what's really sad is I don't even think it's the Crazy Train. I think she's just making up crap and lying so that she can get viewers. And everybody who's hitched onto that train is doing the exact same thing. And it's really pathetic. But anyway, while people are being distracted by that, this is what we need to be paying attention to because I think it is getting very serious in the world. And while I didn't used to think that we really needed to pay attention to what's going on in the world and our relations with all these different countries, it's getting serious. And when we hear people predicting that World War III may be coming, I actually think we've reached a place where that might be the case here in 2026. Now, the first thing that we watched happen, actually, let me even rewind before this. Let's go all the way back to before President Trump was elected as president. And we're in Butler, Pennsylvania, and bullets are flying. Someone is trying to assassinate him. To this day, we still really don't know the truth behind that. And they're never going to tell us the truth behind that, are they? Oh, we got the guy who tried to shoot him. He was dead on the roof. And we'll just sweep that all. Actually, we'll hose that all off and you can forget about it and we're going to move on. Well, I haven't moved on. I want some answers about that. But the main thing that has always been in the back of my mind, especially because I'm a Christian, is that I believe that we watched a miracle happen here. Something supernatural happened, and the president was spared from assassination for a reason. God saved him, protected him, whether it was an angel that deflected the bullet or what have you. There was a reason why Donald Trump survived that. And I have long wondered, I should probably just make this so it's on my face. It'd be more interesting than looking at some ad from Politico. And believe me, I don't go to Politico for all my news, but I wanted to get this little bit of information from them. Anyway, we saw what I believe is that God was sparing Trump. And I've always been like, why? When we got the quote unquote Middle East peace deal, I thought, well, is that what he saved him for? Because we know it has to be something big. You don't keep a person alive in that kind of a public fashion from an assassination if you're not going to have a big reason for that. Well, as we've watched this Middle East deal between Israel and Gaza, we realize, or Hamas, however you want to put it, that's not holding. Has Israel stopped bombing anybody at this point? I mean, they keep throwing bombs and missiles over to all these different countries and stuff. It's like, there's not peace there. I know what peace is, and that's not peace. So we don't really have a peace deal here or a quote unquote ceasefire. So then my brain went, there has to be another reason why President Trump was spared. What was it? It can't just be to get gas prices down and to get inflation down. There has to be something else going on here. Well, I think we're looking at what that something else might be, because as we're watching all these little, I hate to use the reference to chess because everybody likes to say that President Trump is playing 4D chess, and I don't believe that's true. But I do believe we're kind of looking at a chess game here, and he's putting all of the pieces in place where they need to be in case World War III happens. So the first thing that has happened here is I was showing you guys just a minute ago, and then I got into talking, which kind of ruined the point here. But the headline here on Politico was Trump calls for a record 1.5 trillion defense budget, a 50% jump. That is huge for our defense. 1.5 trillion? It's a lot of money. I can't even comprehend that amount of money. And going down to this article is just from January 7th of this month. President Donald Trump on Wednesday declared he would ask Congress for a 1.5 trillion defense budget in 2027, so for next year, a massive 500 billion increase from this year's Pentagon budget, which was already a big increase. So you're talking about $1 trillion for our military, and now he wants to add 500 billion to that. That's an immense amount of money. And when you think about the fact that we're supposed to be living during peacetime, we're not at war, and we're going to have a $1.5 trillion budget during peace. Does anyone believe that that is the way you build up your military for peace? That is a military buildup for war. The president is preparing for war, and I have no doubt about that. He seems to know that something is coming. Now, while Politico here is saying, the president has all these military ambitions, he wants to build the Golden Dome air defense, and he's got this new battleship design. Neither of these programs could be fully funded under current spending levels. Well, I personally would love to believe that we just have all these new ideas about these defensive things that we want to build that are just like fun little side projects. But we all know you don't build a Golden Dome unless you think missiles are going to be flying at you. And why would we think that missiles are going to be flying at us? We've got Canada above us, Mexico below us. Who's going to be attacking us that can get missiles over here that we're going to need a dome for? And why would we need these new battleship designs? Is something going to happen here? There were a couple of podcasts that I listened to over this last week that really opened my eyes. And I wanted to share this with you guys because I really think when we say that World War III is coming in 2026, that maybe we really better be focusing on that. Instead of being distracted by whatever ICE is doing in Minneapolis, whatever the Somalis are spending too much money in Minneapolis. And granted, while we have a lot of fraud going on there, does anybody think we don't have a ton of fraud going on in the government everywhere? And it doesn't matter if you're Somali, American, wherever you come from, there is fraud going on everywhere. Why they're highlighting the Somalis, I don't know. That's what they've decided to do. I've said it before on here. I am middle of the road. So I'm like, leave those cities to themselves. Pull ICE out. If they don't want their police to do anything, F them. Let them destroy themselves. I don't care. I don't want to be financing them being stupid. Just get out of it and let them do whatever they want to do. Because I am a middle of the road person, I like to listen to middle of the road people and get their opinions on this stuff. Tom Bilyeu I'm sorry. He's like a genius. This man has grown 3 businesses that are in different, I don't know if you'd call them segments of the business out there or genres, however you want to put it. They've been 3 different companies that are from 3 different kinds of things. They're not all the same thing. And someone who could take 3 things from nothing and build them into these amazing multi-million-dollar companies is a great thinker. And I wanted to share what he had to say last week on his podcast here. I think it's so important. And this came about because we went into Venezuela. And while we were told that we went into Venezuela because we needed to remove their supposed president, which we don't know if he was duly elected or not, America really shouldn't be in the business of not only overthrowing leaders and doing these coups, especially publicly. Usually we send the CIA in to do it secretly. But people kept saying, we're going into Venezuela for the oil, as if America isn't just flush with oil itself. All we have to do is drill for our own oil and we're perfectly fine. We don't need Venezuela's oil. And Venezuela has a lot of our oil from back in the 70s and even beyond that. So it is our oil anyway. But even so, we don't need that. So why did we go into Venezuela? And here's what Tom had to say about that.
While everyone is focused on AI as the agent of change, we've lost sight of the real shift. Namely, the post-World War II era of peace and prosperity has ended. We're now back in the dog-eat-dog world of great power politics, which we haven't tasted in any real way since the Berlin Wall fell. But we're back in the thick of that now, and Venezuela's catastrophic collapse under socialism turned it into a sacrificial pawn in the life and death chess game between the US and China. The how of it all is going to shock you, but if you don't understand, what comes next is going to catch you completely off guard, and that is something that none of us can afford right now. Back in the 1970s, Venezuela, the country that's currently in the middle of one of the largest humanitarian crises ever as people fled the country long before the US came, they used to have the 4th strongest economy in the world when measured on a per-person basis. Now? Well, in 2023, after nearly 25 years of socialism, their poverty rate skyrocketed to over 80%. Between 2013 and 2021, Venezuela's real GDP fell by more than 75%, one of the largest peacetime collapses on record. Venezuela also suffered one of the world's highest hyperinflation rates, with Reuters reporting the IMF's official projection of their 2018 levels at a staggering 1,000,000%. All of that catastrophe made them a very compelling target for China's Belt and Road Initiative. And in 2018, Maduro officially signed on, effectively inviting China into the US's backyard.
That's the key things, folks. China is in our back door when they're in Venezuela. So what we have gone to do here in Venezuela is to remove the leadership that had made this agreement with China. The president is trying to make sure that China does not have a foothold in our backyard. That is why we went into Venezuela. It wasn't for oil. It wasn't to help the people there and do this coup to overthrow the leadership there, especially because the vice president to Maduro is the one who's running the country. So it's basically Maduro light. Maybe she will participate with whatever America wants her to do. Maybe not. But we certainly are not going to put in Machado, even though she's come over here and given Trump her Peace Prize, her Nobel Peace Prize, and said, hey, you really deserve this. Go ahead and take it, President Trump. He is not going to be like, yeah, you go ahead, come on in, we'll let you run the country. He is having who Maduro had underneath him running the country now. So we don't have a lot of change when it comes to the leadership. So why are we taking Maduro out of the picture? Well, I think the reason we're doing that is because we're trying to keep China out of our back door. And that's why you've also heard President Trump talking about Cuba, because we do not want Russia or China having any kind of a foothold anywhere near us. And now we also have the president looking at Greenland. And a lot of people are talking about imperialism. And I mentioned this on my last podcast. Are we becoming an imperial nation now? Is this an empire? Is America becoming an empire? And we're just grabbing all the land that we can possibly grab under President Trump because he just wants to make America bigger than it was. I don't think that's true at all. I believe that we are looking like an empire, but it's because we need to look like an empire because we want to make it so that Russia and China do not want to come up against the empire of America. What is Greenland? Greenland is another foothold that could be very bad for us if anybody else is there other than us. We've already had a base that we had set up there. So this is somewhere that we would want to have if World War III was to start. It's for our own protection. And so when I'm watching these movements of our president, I'm thinking he knows something big is coming our way and he wants to protect us ahead of time. Then I listened to Tucker this last week, and this only added more fuel to the fire because now we know that when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, the war that's going on there, Russia has had their fill and they are ready to get even more serious than they already were. And they are threatening some pretty big stuff.
But none of those concerns comes even close to what's happening in Eastern Europe, what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. Russia, and prepare yourselves because this is the global headline, Russia is actively considering the use of nuclear weapons against Europe. Not against Kiev, against Europe. Specifically, the UK and Germany. Just taking out the UK and Germany with nuclear weapons. That's a fact. Now, we're going to explain why we know that that's true.
And basically what Tucker's going to go on to say is that we have a top advisor for Putin here, and that's what he's advising. And this is what they're putting out as a warning. Now, while we have watched the war in Ukraine, it kind of looks like Putin is a little bit of a paper tiger and Russia. Are they serious? Are they a danger for us? Because really, when I think about the Cold War and the Soviet Union, if they hadn't already had Ukraine at the time, how quickly could they have annihilated Ukraine and taken it over? No time. Russia, the fact that we've been going on and on against the Ukraine here with a president that is an actor who isn't even a real president, but he does have basically a large portion of the world on his side and NATO fighting for him. So it's almost like we've had the beginning of World War III already starting. We already have what looks like what World War III could be. Now, if we go in and take Greenland, and based on the stuff that we've done with Venezuela, we already know that NATO, I'm sorry, what is the point of it? It already should have been broken up anyway. I've been one of those people that's like, we should have thrown the United Nations out of America a long time ago. You guys not only don't have any building on our land, but we're not giving you any more funding. We should not be funding this stuff anymore. It's like we're funding our enemies against us. But NATO, there's no point to it. If we're just going to go in and take over Greenland from Denmark, and it looks like we're probably going to do that based on the fact that the Danish, I think it was the prime minister was here, and he didn't look very happy when he was coming out of the White House or Mar-a-Lago when he was meeting with Trump. So it's like, yeah, they're going to be giving us Greenland. NATO has no point. But I don't think you can look at all of these things where we're increasing the funding to the Pentagon like we're in wartime. So we're putting ourselves forward money-wise like wartime. We've gone into Venezuela to make sure that we are preventing China and Russia and anybody else from having a foothold there. We're talking about doing the same thing with Cuba. And now we're talking about going into Greenland. And we're going to take that over and make sure that we have a nice little bubble around ourselves. And then we have Russia going, we're going to nuke, big European countries here and wipe them off the face of the earth. I don't know how anybody can think that World War III is not going to start in 2026. We've heard them talking, the chatter for several years now. I think this is the year. And I think that for those of you who are listening here, maybe we need to start preparing ourselves for that kind of a thing. What would you do if 2026 is when World War III is going to start? And maybe we should start living that way.